Hey everyone, I'm back from Auckland, New Zealand. I'm back from the 11th Urban Sketches Symposium, which happened in Auckland last week. And in this video, I want to show you the sketches that I have made during the trip, during the symposium. But first, I want to give a huge shout out to my patrons who have been supporting me for months and years. And it is your monetary support that made this trip way less stressful, because this is kind of a high expense trip for me. The plane ticket was more expensive than I expected. The plane ticket was around US $1,800 to $2,000 from Singapore to New Zealand. And I had to pay for the hotel before and after the symposium. The accommodation was provided during the symposium by the USk committee, so that's great. And I had to pay for other expenses, and my camera broke down during the symposium, thankfully after the symposium, so I will have to get this repaired. Actually, there's something wrong inside and something wrong with the touch screen, so repair cost is going to be quite hefty. So I'll probably just buy a new second-hand camera. So yeah, there is a lot of cost involved. So thank you, patrons. Thank you for your support. So my patrons, you can consider yourself as producers for the 8 daily videos that I have made last week. And for my non-patrons, which is most of you watching this video right now, if you enjoy what you watch, consider supporting me on Patreon, because that really allows me to make more urban sketching videos and just more videos on my YouTube channel. I wasn't paid to make these videos, it's just that I really enjoy making them. So that's how I usually spend the money that I get from patrons. I usually just save it for an overseas trip. So if you want to support me on Patreon, just visit the link that I have for you in the video description below. Your support is a huge help to me. Alright, on with the sketchbook tour. So this is the watercolor sketchbook that I brought with me to the symposium. This is the Agile Lab sketchbook made with 100% cotton, hot pressed watercolor paper, and I like the fabric texture. It's really nice, except it's white, so it gets dirty quite easily. I usually don't draw on the first 2 pages, and I don't draw on these 2 pages as well due to the binding here, because it's difficult to draw across these 2 pages. So I usually have the stamps and stickers on these 2 pages, and I have a few stickers here. I did not collect as many stickers as some other sketchers. I wish I had more stickers, because that would really be very cool. So if you happen to go on overseas sketching trips, I highly recommend you make stickers such as this instead of name cards, because when you give people stickers, they can just stick it immediately in their sketchbooks. Whereas if you give them name cards, which is nice, but they will have to find some place to keep the name cards. So stickers, I think, are more effective. So one of the stamps here is upside down, because I got a little girl to help me with the stamping, and she stamped this upside down. And in the video that I made, I said that it's okay for things to go wrong, because sometimes things do go wrong during trips. But don't be too caught up by the mistakes or caught up by the negative experience, because if you look back at the whole experience as a whole, it's still going to be a positive experience. So I'm perfectly fine with this upside down chop. So this is the packing list. I drew the jacket, but I forgot to pack the jacket in my bag, because here in Singapore it's really hot. So usually if I go to a country with cold weather, I would just hold the jacket in my hand and not pack it in the bag. So this time around I forgot to hold the jacket in my hand, so that's why I forgot to bring the jacket. But anyway, I managed to borrow a jacket from Tony McKnight, the local correspondent in Auckland. So big thanks to you, man, Tony, for providing the jacket, because it was quite cold for some of the mornings and some of the nights. So I drew this portable painter palette, but I actually did not use this palette as much as I thought I would, because I brought along another palette. This is the other palette that I brought along with me, which is actually a Bijou box with an integrated water bottle behind. And I managed to pack many colors in this box. The main reason why I bring this box is because I want the integrated water bottle so that it's more convenient for me to just pour the water out into this tray, which I can fit by the side here, and paint. So I can paint very quickly. The setup is very quick with this watercolor box compared to this, where I have to bring the water bottle out to pour into the cups by the side. So this is way more convenient, and going forward I think I may just bring this palette. The only downside with this palette is the mixing space here is kind of limited, but this is a very compact box. It's a very convenient box thanks to the integrated water bottle. The brand is Winsor Newton, but this is actually a generic box, so you can find this box design from other companies as well. I brought these two brushes together with an extra size 6 brush, which I use instead of these two brushes. So for my future trips, I'm just going to bring like a size 6 and size 8. I brought 3 Uniball air pens, but I only use one, so I'm just going to bring 2 total in the future, one for drawing and one for backup. So looking at the packing list, I can definitely make some improvements, like some of the things that I brought, I didn't even use them, such as the lavalier mics. I thought I had time to interview some people, but it turned out I just did not have the time to interview people. This sketch was drawn at Changi Airport, Terminal 3. This was drawn with pen and ink, but colored later on in the hotel, if I remember correctly. So that's Singapore Airlines, the national carrier here in Singapore. But the flight that I took was actually from Air New Zealand, and it was a very comfortable flight. For some reason, when I purchased the ticket, the price for the premium economy seat is just maybe 5 to 10% more compared to the economy seat. So I actually paid for the premium economy, which is about 2,000 US, or if you translate it to Singapore dollars, it's about 2,600 Singapore dollars. So that is quite expensive, which is why earlier on I mentioned that patrons you guys really help a lot with covering the expenses. Because the trip to New Zealand, which is 2,600 Singapore dollars for me, I could easily use that money to go to Japan, pay for hotels for maybe 1 week or 10 days and come back, and I still will have money left. So the plane ticket to New Zealand is just way higher than I expected. Or should I say that it's just more affordable to travel to Asian countries. This was sketched at the cafe or the food court at Auckland Airport while I was waiting for my shuttle bus, so I did not have time for coloring. So I will color this maybe some other time with the help of a reference photo. So when you are sketching overseas or when you're just sketching on location, it's always good to take a reference photo first before you start sketching, so that if for some reason you cannot complete your sketch, you can always work on your sketch later on when you are able to do so. This was the first sketch drawn in this was the second sketch drawn in Auckland. This was drawn inside a cafe, so that's Ben from Hong Kong, Alvin, this is Anyan from South Korea, Stephanie Bauer. They are all having lunch at this cafe. And Ben is supposed to be teaching in this cafe, which is why they are there just to scout the location. And I had great fun talking to them, and it's great fun to meet with friends. I'm not sure when I met Alvin, but I probably have known Alvin for maybe 7 years. I met band in 2016 during the Urban Sketches Symposium in Manchester, and I went on a road trip with him, Rob Sketcherman, Louisa, and Gary. And if you guys have not watched those videos, I would try to remember to put the links in the video description below so that you can watch them. So wow, 2016. That was 7 years ago, so I still remember the trip very vividly. It was so fun. And I will have to thank my patrons again for your support back then, because 2016 was also the year that I got married, so expenses were high. I had to pay for the Manchester trip, and I had to pay for the wedding, so the extra money from patrons really came in very handy, very helpful. So I'm always very grateful to my patrons. This was drawn at Albert Park. The main things I remember from this sketch or from this scene was the trees in this park. They are so beautiful. And there is a huge variety of trees with different shapes. Here I only drew like some palm trees and this big tree in the background. But the thing is, there are many beautiful, there's just a huge variety of trees at this park. The second thing I remember from this scene is this park is at the top of a hill, so it was quite challenging to climb up the hill. It was quite tiring. I painted the tree trunks first and then painted the leaves. On hindsight, I should have painted the leaves followed by the tree trunk, but it's wet on wet, so the tree trunks sort of disappeared. Anyway, this is nice because I remember the company that I sketched with, Alvin, Judy, Sally Black from Australia. I met them in previous symposiums, so it's really great to meet them again. This was drawn at Papakura Marai, which is a community place for the residents, and they have many activities running in this community place. So while I was there, the sketchers, the instructors, they exchange songs with the, I'll say, the council. I don't know of other descriptors to describe the people there. So we exchanged songs, and it was quite moving because, wow, the songs sound really nice, and they play the guitar and their voices are so loud. It was actually quite moving. And after that we had lunch, and I saw some people practice their boxing outside on the field. I did not record that though, because I try not to record. I try to do most of my recording inside this house, inside this hall, rather than outside, because I don't know whether or not I have permission to shoot outside. So inside this hall, there are many really wonderful sculptures sculpted from wood. And unfortunately, I only had time to draw like these two sketches, but there are actually many things to draw. That's Jane Blundell, and I can't remember who she is. That is Marina Grachnet. This is 19th of April, which is on the day of the opening reception, and this is one day later. And this is the day of the first day of the workshop. And this is Maru Godas, and she is such a lively instructor. She is so positive, and she is teaching gouache. She taught people how to paint without fear. If things go wrong, nobody died, so it's always okay. And she is showing the participants how to use credit card to apply color to cover large areas. She is so fun to watch and to listen to. So there is this box that she put in the middle with the friends of gouache, which are water-soluble and non-soluble colored pencils and crayons that the participants can use. The color that I use here is probably burnt sienna and cobalt blue deep. The hot press watercolor paper for this sketchbook, for this Etcher sketchbook, is pretty good, but it's definitely not as good compared to Fabriano or Archer's hot press watercolor paper. It's good, it's really good, it's just not as good compared to the more branded, high quality watercolor paper. But if you want to buy this sketchbook, this is definitely something I can recommend easily. So this was drawn at Valken Lane and High Street cross section, and this was at the location where Hugo taught his workshop. So they are trying to draw this street scene with very challenging perspective, and the students actually did really well. This is a really challenging perspective because, first of all, this is a wide scene. There is a slope going down here, and this slope has a different vanishing point compared to the buildings by the side, and there is also this slope here at this angle. So it's very challenging to draw this, and the students did a wonderful job. Or should I say, Hugo is just a wonderful instructor who managed to guide the students really well. Yeah, so while sketching, there are always people who will just come and stand behind us to to see what we are doing. And sometimes we will just strike conversations with them. We tell them that we are the urban sketchers and we are here for the symposium, which is why during these few days you are going to see so many sketchers drawing and sketching and painting on the streets of Auckland. This was drawn at the first sketch walk location. This was drawn at Freiburg Square. So I wasn't able to, I did not have the time to color this because I just don't have time. I spent a lot of time recording footages for the video. So maybe I will paint this later on, again with the help of a reference photo. And it's really great to see so many sketchers, so many like-minded people sketching at this single location. And this is a wonderful location because there are steps, like many steps in the background, so sketchers were able to just sit on the steps and sketch the scene or sketch each other, sketch one another. This was drawn at Stephanie Bauer's workshop, and this was very challenging to draw because, of course, the perspective is challenging. And on hindsight, when I look at this sketch right now, I probably should have painted another wash here just to make this area just much darker. Right now, you can see this, you can still see the light value. So this sketch is going to look better with this whole area darker. Anyway, this was my 5th try. This was my first try. I drew this too far up on the page, so I was seated quite low, so this should be further down. So this was a mistake. And this was my 2nd try. Again, I drew this too far up on the page. My 3rd try, and my 2nd try, 3rd try, 4th try. So by the 4th try, I sort of knew what I wanted, and this is the 5th try. So when you are sketching challenging scenes or challenging perspective, it may be good to use a pencil just to draft out the outlines, the composition and the perspective first before you draw, so that you can make less mistakes later on, or you can create several thumbnails just to check the composition, just to see what kind of mistakes you can make during the thumbnailing stage, so that you can avoid making those same mistakes later on. So creating thumbnails is pretty useful. And this is a sketchbook, so I'm perfectly fine with mistakes like this, just random sketches like this. So as mentioned earlier, if things don't go right, it's okay. Nobody's there to judge you. Just go for a symposium, go for a sketching trip, have fun. You don't have to be too stressed out. This is the Auckland Town Hall. This was drawn after the symposium. So the symposium happened on, the closing happened on the 22nd of April. So this was drawn on the 23rd of April. And this is the beautiful Auckland Town Hall. It's a very beautiful building. By the way, I have taken many reference photos during the trip, so if you guys want to use those reference photos for drawing, I will again try to remember to put the link to where you can download those photos in the video description below. This was drawn at Ben Luke's workshop. So Ben from Hong Kong taught food sketching. Oh, this was drawn on the 22nd of April and this was 23rd. So I actually jumped forward and backwards. Okay, I remember why. I drew this mistake here, and second try, third try, fourth try, so I left this page blank and I went on to draw this, and later on I went back to draw this. So the sequence is not like in chronological order. So Ben is great. Yeah, so all the students managed to follow along with his workshop quite well. He likes to use overlapping shapes to create excitement for the food, and he likes to use vibrant colors for the food to make them look more delicious. And the students, they did a great job following along with the workshop. I used Ben's watercolor palette to paint this sketch, and it was not easy because I did not know the colors, the paint that he has in his watercolor box. I think there are probably, if I did not remember wrongly, there are about 24 colors, so I had to find out which colors are which. So in the end, I just used this color, which is raw cyan. No, is it raw cyan or yellow ochre? Raw cyan or yellow ochre, a blue which looks like Prussian blue to me, and burnt sienna, and ultramarine for this sketch. Just these three colors, because I just can't figure out all the other colors that he has on his palette. And the reason why I use his palette box instead of my palette box is because I don't want to clean my palette box. Yeah, so I use his brushes and his palette box. Thanks, Ben, for your paint. Okay, so this is the debrief after the symposium. I was there at the debrief, and we have the volunteers, the organizing team, we have Rita, the education director, and Janine, the USk president, here at this debrief. So we are talking about how we can improve the symposium. We are actually taking notes, and we are going to pass those notes on to the next symposium planning team, the team is going to be in Argentina because the next location is in Argentina. So we are going to pass on all this experience that we have to them to help them plan a successful symposium. So I kind of like this sketch because this is the, I would say, the only sketch where I had the time to just slow down and just draw. So during this meeting or briefing, I could slow down and I could draw the faces more accurately. And you may notice I actually cancel out some of the names because I spelled them wrongly. Yeah, Stephen is spelled with two E's, S-T-E-E-V-E-N. And this is Yong or Yang. In one of the videos I call him Yong, but his name is actually spelled as Yang, but I'm not sure if it's actually pronounced as Yang or Yong. I will have to ask him again next month in South Korea because I'm going to the Gyeongju Sketch Fest, and he is going to be one of the translators helping out at the Gyeongju Sketch Fest. Wow, there are so many faces here, so many wonderful people, sketchers that I met. This is fantastic. Wow, I'm not sure if you can hear this. This is the sound of the pigment on the surface of the paper. Yep, that is definitely the sound of the loose pigments on the paper. I use cobalt blue tip. So cobalt blue tip is heavily granulated, has a lot of pigments, so I think some of the pigments are actually on the surface of the paper. This, well, I did not write the date and the name of this place. Anyway, this is St. Paul's Church, which was very difficult to draw. And one thing I notice about myself when I'm sketching overseas is, especially when I'm on a sketching trip, my sketches don't usually look that great compared to when I'm just going out and about in Singapore to sketch. So when I'm out here in Singapore, going to just one location to sketch, I have more time and I'm more relaxed. But for overseas sketching trips, I feel like I'm always in a rush, so I draw faster, I make more mistakes. And you can see that in the lines. The lines are more, I would say, sloppy or sketchy. And sometimes the perspective is a bit wonky. Everything looks a bit off. So yeah, that's what happened to most of my location sketches when I'm overseas. And that's why I really like this sketch, because I had the time to just slow down, relax, and draw slowly. St. Paul's Church is a beautiful church. I wanted to sketch this church from the outside because I sketched it from the inside a few pages ago. Yeah, this is the interior of St. Paul's Church, and this is the exterior. There are many, the design has a lot of little spots of white, and it's difficult for me to recreate the spots of white with my white gel pen. So for the next trip, I will probably bring more Posca markers, which are so useful. Oh, there's a little scooter man here, e-scooter man. I use the e-scooter to get around places. It's really useful. And this was drawn, I remember very vividly, this was drawn on a Monday morning. So it's a work day and there are so many people going to work during office hour. And while I sketched this, it started to rain and then it suddenly stopped. Oh wow, that gave me a scare because I thought it was going to be a heavy rain, but it stopped suddenly, thankfully. So I was able to manage, so I was able to finish this sketch. And I remember it was very cold, very windy. So for this sketch, this was actually sketched at the same location. It's just that I turned 180 degrees to face the back or the north. Or I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure which direction I face. Anyway, this is in the opposite direction of the St. Paul's Church. So that's the Sky Tower in the background, and this is the city. And I drew the perspective for this building wrong because, again, I did not check the perspective right. I just went straight with ink, so that can be prone to mistakes. It would be great if I could, create some thumbnails here. Notice I left the page here blank because if I were to draw this building, like fill the page, it's going to look like boring because there's nothing exciting here. So maybe I would just write some text here to fill up the page later. More mistakes. I tried to draw the waterfront, but when I drew this, straight away I knew something was off. This was drawn too big. So if what you are drawing at first is too big, all the things that you're going to draw later will be too big. So if I've drawn this too big, I won't be able to fit the waterfront in front. So for my second try, I tried to draw this much smaller so that I can at least fit the waterfront. And this is an exceedingly challenging scene to sketch because there are just so much details. There are just so many buildings in the background, so many windows, and we have the very structured buildings, and we have the more organic shapes for the boats with different angles. Wow, this was very, very challenging to draw, and I only had 1 hour to draw. I think I started at 4 p.m. if I remember correctly, and by 5 p.m. the sun was down, so there was no longer light and shadows or cast shadows. So this was challenging. If I had to redraw this again, I would probably draw this even smaller so that I can see more of the boats and the waterfront. And when I drew this sketch, before I color or fill in the colors with watercolor, it looked unfinished. But after I put in the colors, I added some details with the spots of black for the windows and little details with the white gel pen, the yellow and the orange postcard markers. This scene now looks more busy and looks more complete. I'm not very satisfied with this sketch, but it looks alright. It reminds me of the place that I sketched at, and that to me is more important. So whenever you're on a sketching trip and your sketch doesn't look great, it's alright. At least you still have something to remember scene for. So yeah, so this is the last sketch that I sketched in Auckland. This was me sitting in Auckland Airport at the departure hall, sketching the airport. And I really like the beautiful granulation of cobalt blue dip. This is such a lovely color compared to, I mean, French ultramarine is nice, but cobalt blue dip is even nicer. Yeah, so while sketching this scene, I met a sketcher from Numia, which is the capital of New Caledonia, if I remember correctly. Yeah, so when you're at a sketching symposium, you will meet sketchers and friends or strangers that you don't know of who are just sketching like everywhere. I drew the front of the plane wrong, so you can see this diagonal line, which is like too steep. Yeah. So after making that mistake, I thought, you know what, maybe I should just like continue. Yeah, so I continue to sketch, and this is what I have. And yeah, I have some blank space here, so I will write the name of this place with postcard markers later on, and of course the date. Let's see what I have inside this pocket at the back of the sketchbook. So this is the Air New Zealand plane ticket, and I went to the seat B5, but this is actually gate B5. So the seat B5 is either the first class or the business class. So I sat there for like 5 minutes, and the air stewardess came up to me and wanted to check my ticket. So I went to the wrong seat. So I left the seating. Thankfully, no one laughed at me when I left. This is the Spark SIM card information. So Spark is the telecom, the telecommunications company in New Zealand, and I bought the SIM card there. And I purchased the SIM card before I went out of the customs, so it's actually cheaper. If I went out and purchased the SIM card, it's going to cost more because I will have to pay tax. Anyway, the SIM card is 112 New Zealand dollars for unlimited data. I purchased the unlimited data because I was there to cover the symposium, but now that I'm back here in Singapore and look at how much data I use, I actually use less than 20 gigabytes for coverage, including the few YouTube live streams that I made. This is a name card from Ravi, a sketcher from Kerala, India. Yeah, so I keep some of the name cards here. But it's easy for people to just make stickers, and so that you can stick the stickers in the sketchbook. It's easier that way. This is the receipt for the hotel, which is 225 New Zealand dollars a night. $100 is added for the deposit, and yeah, so that's all. So when you're traveling overseas, it will be good to keep some of these receipts for future reference. You may also want to keep or take some of those maps that you see at the airport and just put it inside the pocket if you have a pocket in your sketchbook. I lost the air ticket when I lost the air ticket for the return trip though, so I only have this left. So I still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spreads left in this sketchbook, and I will try to fill up this sketchbook when I'm in Gyeongju, South Korea next month. I may be making some videos there as well, so do subscribe to my YouTube channel to get notified when those videos appear. Before I end this video, I want to thank my patrons again because you guys are literally the sponsors of this channel. If you have followed my YouTube channel for a while, you know that I don't have sponsored ads because I don't have sponsors. So you guys are the only sponsors that I have. Alright, see you guys in the next video. Bye.